Well, good morning. We're almost done. Okay? Let me go ahead and introduce myself really quickly. Like it says on the agenda, my name is Alan Lopez. I'm part of the CARE training group. It's a training branch of GAF Manufacturing. And so what we do, we go out. Some of you have attended our seminars and whatnot. We train anybody that's in the roofing industry. So our main focus, again, being part of GAF, is to educate the roofing industry on whatever they need education on. Mainly and mostly, of course, we're going to train on our products, and we're going to train sales, marketing, whatever it is that you guys need. But oftentimes, one of the biggest requests that we have is safety. Now, you figure, why would we want to train safety as a roofing manufacturing company? Well, number one is because we have a responsibility to the industry. And number two is if we train you about safety, we enforce, if we help you enforce these regulations, well, we're in good time, we're in the good side of OSHA at the same time, but also you stay fresh in our minds and we stay fresh in your minds. Part of my job is to go on roofs. I often go on roofs and work with contractors. So they want to know how to install our material, especially when we are in this trend, GAF, which is a good trend of coming out with new shingles every year. You guys, how many of you buy shingles, by the way, from GAF? Just for my sake. Humor me, okay? All right. Well, you know what I'm talking about, right? So every time we come out with a new shingle, somebody needs to teach you how to install it. So that's me. Well, what happens is I go to these jobs, and I have a requirement and a responsibility to my own company that I have to be safe. So here comes Alan with hard hat, safety glasses, my harness, my rope, and I even bring my own anchor. Why do you think I bring my own anchor? Because they don't have any. Thank you. So I always bring my own anchor, and I always have to go buy new anchors. So what I see and what this session is all about is exactly what I get to see and what being in this industry has taught me about safety as a contractor, as a manufacturer, as a roofer, and as a homeowner. We're going to talk about both things, residential and commercial. I think it's important. Don't mind the joke there a little bit, right? Because this is what a lot of contractors, not people that are here, what they consider their safety program, right? A little icebreaker for you. Take a look at this list of the 10 jobs posted there. Now, think in your mind, what do these jobs have in common? Now, roofers, number 4. Well, what do they have in common? I'll tell you one. The first 3 have a reality show of some kind. True? You've seen X-Men, right? Logging, Fishers, The Deadliest Catch, name says it all. Okay? And then, of course, aircraft pilots. I was watching the other day, airplane repo. Dangerous job. So what do they have in common other than they have their own reality show? What do these jobs have in common? What is that? They are hazardous, right? They are the deadliest jobs in the United States. We're number 4. Some stats have been shared, so backs this up. Why? It's roofing a deadliest job, one of the deadliest jobs. Because I often see Grandpa doing roofing like this. Is there any safety in that? Now the question comes out, I often ask the question, why do we roof like this? Any thoughts? We've always had, right? In the past. What else? Was that? Cheaper. I love that word, by the way. Because every time I meet with contractors and I go on and talk about safety, every time they see me with this bag where I have my robe, my harness, my hat, my glasses, my gloves, they always ask me, why do I bring that stuff to the job site? Okay? I'm going to show you some pictures with you, but it's often because it's cheaper and because that's the way we've done it. That's the way Grandpa learned how to do it. So why not? It always takes something drastically to change our mind. Let me share the story, what happened. I was in California. I was doing the same job. By the way, I'm not the West trainer anymore. I'm the Central trainer, but I guess we didn't change that on our website. But when I was in California doing trainings, I happened to be working with a contractor that was going to court at the same time. And what happened in California is one of his crew members of this roofing crew that he had died of a fall. It was in commercial work. The guy was part of a union, which makes it even worse, the situation. Funny part is that the union didn't file any charges for this roofer. The family of the roofer didn't file any charges against this roofer, against the death of the family member. But it was the city of San Francisco who filed the charges. Now, that's not unprecedented, because cities can do that if they see fit, if they see negligence and whatnot, they can do that. What was unprecedented was that they actually went through with it. And so, to make a long story short, they pressed the charges, and he was found guilty after a couple of years. The guy is no longer in business. He owns hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, hundreds of thousands of dollars to the family, and he is in prison. Him and his foreman are in prison for 10 years. Okay? Now, that changed the way that OSHA looks at things, because now what that said to OSHA is like, now we can really enforce what we need to. We have precedents now. And this is all about precedents in this country. If something's been tried and it's been successful, guess what we're going to do now? We're going to continue to do it. And so we, as roofing industry, we have to be aware of these things. We have to be aware of what we need to do to be safe. So with that in mind, then we need to ask the question, what is fall protection? Any ideas what fall protection is? Is it just a matter of me telling you don't fall? What does it include? Well, by definition, this is what it means. A series of reasonable steps taken to cause elimination or control of the injuries, effects of unilateral fall while accessing or working at height. Now, to make that in English, what that says, take the necessary steps to not fall off the roof. Okay? Why do we say this? Because we have some false statistics here. This is as of 2011. Now my phone doesn't want to work. Falls are the leading cause of fatalities in the construction industry. Just to back that up, what was said earlier, just to make more resonance to it. This is nationwide 2011, which is the most up-to-date stats that we have. Out of 4,188 workers' fatalities in private industry in the calendar year 2011 were 738, or 17% went in construction. Okay? So we haven't even gotten into roofing. And then the cost of these injuries and the cost of the care for these individuals. Along with that, one of the reasons, now talking specifically in construction, in 2011, the violations for fall protection were almost about 7,000 violations for not being protected. Okay? Again, these are high numbers. Again, this is nationwide, but still relevant. So where did these fatal incidents occur? Now, as you look in the stat, 37% of them occurred in roofing. 37%. I don't see any other part of the pie that's bigger than that. That's 37% in our own industry. Non-fatal, 12%. And I will even consider that 35% of ladders also be part of roofing. Okay? So although you didn't die, you still had an incident. Okay? Those numbers are high. So one of the first things that we need to do is that we need to plan not to fall. And one of the ways that we do this is simply by best practices. I am not an OSHA representative. I am not liable for what I'm telling you, number one. But what I am liable for is to make sure that my industry becomes a responsible industry. So these are some of the things that I've seen across the country that do work for roofers. Those are some of the things that my roofers that I meet with that follow safety guidelines tell me that this is what they're doing. I also meet often with consultants. One of the things that we're going to talk about is actually finding or hiring a consultant for safety. It can be part of OSHA. It can be part of my OSHA. It can be part of just a independent individual that's well educated and certified to do an effect and take a plan into effect. So best practices dictates that fall protection becomes an integral part of the work planning process, from constructability to system installation to use of maintenance. So everything that happens on the roof, so when you tear off a roof, in fact, the way that you go off a roof, where are you going to go, where's the easiest access to go on a roof, what are you going to do when you're up there, when you're going to start tearing off, when you're going to start cleaning, where are you going to dump the material, all these things go into the planning of the job. It's not where the dumpster fits better, right? But is where is the most safe area for that dumpster to be. Does that make sense? So all these things come into the planning. And a lot of times we're going to go like this and we're going to scratch our heads because what's the best thing to do is not always the most convenient to do or the most cost-effective to do. Okay? So again, the second one, the workplace cannot be truly safe unless fall protection is incorporated in every phase of the process. So you cannot only say I have harnesses and I have anchors and that's it, I'm safe. It has to include everything from beginning to end of fall protection. Okay? So I give you this list talking about from beginning to end, and I want you to answer that question. So I have 4 different steps there. I want you to tell me if those steps are in the right order. So number 1, we have the fall arrest, fall prevention, positioning, and retrieval. Is that the right process? So what will be number 1? Fall prevention, right? So number 1, fall prevention. Now, if fall prevention, it's there, the other ones should not happen, right? But let's say that they are going to happen because that's the next step. Not only have to have fall prevention steps in my process, but if something happens, I need to have the right approach to proceed. Okay, so the next one will be what? So fall prevention is number 1, so green is number 1. What will be number 2? Positioning. How many of you agree with positioning? Right? Positioning will be number 2. What does positioning mean? It means where on the roof am I standing? Is that a hazardous area? Am I going to fall here? And if so, am I confident that if I fall, I'm going to be safe? Okay? And then third one, fall arrest. And then the last one, of course, will be the retrieval process. I was talking to one of my peers in Canada, one of the trainers that we have in Canada, and he actually came from a roofing company. And he actually enlightened me with some good suggestions. In his company that he used to work for, not only they have on his crew, not only they have responsibilities with the job as far as who's going to be the guy opening the shingle, or who's going to be bringing the shingles, who's going to be setting up or cleaning up, who's going to be nailing the shingles, etc. But they also had responsibilities with safety. So every week, at the beginning of the week, they will meet as a crew, they will go over the jobs that they had, and they will identify positions on safety. So they would say to the manager, so the crew leader will be the one that always has the cell phone. That individual, during their trainings, he knew that he had to have emergency contact numbers. And emergency contact numbers identified the family members, but also identified the closest hospitals, the closest clinics available in that area where they were going to be working. So he had all those numbers. Now, the second in command will be the guy that will work on the retrieval process. So if someone will fall off the roof, he knew that his job was to go get that person. Okay? Now, he also worked with the next, where somebody was supposed to, if there was a cut, if there was any hazardous materials, if there was an assistant for first aid, then the third individual, usually the guy that opens the shingles, he will be the one going into the vehicle and retrieving the first aid kit. Okay? Usually that person, the company will pay for that individual to have some type of first response training for safety. Now, usually the person that falls is who? In a residential job. Which one? The newest guy, right? So they will always make sure that the newest guy, was trained very well. Also, the person that falls is usually the guy that's nailing the shingles off the edge. Okay? So they had this plan already set, and they have backup plans. So part of planning is identifying positions within your crews as to what are they responsible for in a safety procedure. Well, as part of that job planning, you also need to control the fall exposures. What does that mean? Each employee on a walking, working surface, horizontal or vertical surface, when unprotected side, edge, or hole, which is 6 feet above, we know the OSHA rule, or more above or lower level, should be protected from falling by the use of guardrail systems, safety net systems, or personal fall arrest systems. So what's the rule? 6 feet. You have no idea how many jobs I go to that the eave, that edge, is 6 feet or higher, and people are not tied up. There's no railings. There's nothing. These are usually the ones that ask me, why do you bring that up? It's not high enough, right? What's the rule again? 6 feet, okay? Funny story. This happened to my parents. I know that safety is followed by contractors. I had a contractor worked on my mom's. My mom owns my parents own condos in Salt Lake City, Utah. It had been 25 years since this condo had been worked on. They were re-roofing the place. You can imagine what happened in 25 years. The plywood wasn't in very good shape. My mom has a condo on the 3rd level. They were turning off the roof. The lady that lived at the condo at the time was making her bed. Okay? And she hears this ruckus all of a sudden. She waves the dust out of her bedroom and looks at this guy hanging from the roof, from the ceiling, wanting to fall on the bed. Okay, what had happened is the plywood was so rotted out that as he was cleaning it up, he fell through the roof. And because the only thing that saved him was the fact that he was tied up. Okay? Now, the guy got the day off. He went home and whatnot. But I didn't know who the contractor was. And as I was trying to investigate the process and help my mom out with the insurance deal and whatnot, we had to know who he was. So I went, and I was very happy to know there was one of the contractors that actually worked very closely with GAF. We knew he had his insurance all in order. We knew he had his safety plans all in order. So that's a way that I was able to testify that, it does happen. Contractors really do take care of their people, and they really do take care of their company by maintaining their safety process. Okay? Let's go ahead and move on. I would like to talk about all these things, but don't have the time. There are 3 main ways to do fall prevention. Fall prevention, number 1, a system that will prevent a person from falling to a lower level, number 1. Number 2, obviously an example of that will be railings. Number 2 is work positioning or fall restraints, a system that will allow the worker to approach a fall hazard and work, but will not allow the worker to fall or lower level. This happens more in the commercial business. How many of you do commercial work? So this is more in the commercial industry. So a building that has no parapet walls that you have to work off the edge is identifying a system that will allow that worker to do, finish the work, wrap up the metals. If you're doing, finish your work edges and whatnot without falling. And then the third one is a fall arrest system, a system that will protect the person from crashing to a lower level after a fall. So again, if you must fall, you also need to be tied up so that you don't go down and kill yourself. Okay? Now, these 2 systems, regardless of what system you use, depending on what industry you are, you have to have 2 individuals in your company. Okay? Again, one of them probably works for you and should be doing this thing. The other one, either you hire someone or you partner with someone. Like, I love these initiatives that my OSHA is doing here in the state of Michigan, because one of these individuals is going to come from them. Okay? So you have a competent person. So a competent person, what that means is someone who is capable to identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings or working conditions, which are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to the employees, and who has the authorization to take prompt corrective action. So that is a competent person. that's usually someone that works for you, okay? That could be your foreman, that can be a supervisor, that can be a project manager. They identify the hazard, they know what to do, they have the authority to know what to do. A qualified person, okay, what this means is one with a recognized degree of or professional certificates and extensive knowledge and experience in the subject field, who is capable of designing, analyzing, evaluating, and specifications in the subject work, project, or product. So this one is somebody that is MIOSHA, somebody that's been certified, somebody that can train you on. Now, if you're not taking advantage of that training that was presented, you should, because that's where you find that qualified individual. Now, there's a lot of organizations out there that don't belong to any, or perhaps as an employee, any of these organizations, but there are individuals that are called consultants that consult on these safety issues. Now, they have to be trained and certified by the state, by the government, in order to be what we call a qualified person. There are a lot of companies. Usually, the larger the company, the more likely you are to have a partnership with a qualified person. That, again, might be a consultant that works for you. Okay? But nevertheless, you need to have both what we refer to a competent person and a qualified person. Competent, we're all competent, we can all do the job, we can identify things that are hazardous and everything, but you also need to get, that competent person needs to get that information from a qualified person. Okay? Let me bring that picture is. Then this qualified or competent person are going to look at the different things on the roof. Again, if you're doing commercial, you're looking at areas where that might be dangerous on 0 falls, distance allowed. So you're looking at these areas. What's around me? What equipment is around me? What are the hazardous conditions of that roof that I can prevent any falls from? This obviously is in the construction industry. Your fall prevention is required to work from steel reinforcements over 6 feet high, so same rule. And then if there's any equipment on the facilities that you have to walk through or walk by, again, this is more for your commercial roofers. Another thing that we don't discuss too much is you also have to know what's inside that building, what are the sweet spots or the weak spots of that roof, and you have to identify, for example, a soft spot of a roof, which we're going to cover, will be a skylight. And so you have to identify, not because the skylight's cover, that doesn't mean that's protected. Okay, when I mean that has that dome, that's not a protection. Okay. Also, moving from one roof to another, walking surfaces are higher, so going from one roof to another that meets that distance of 6 feet, you also have to have prevention. We often find ourselves in commercial roofing doing the roof here and then the roof next door, and they're completely separate. So rather than going downstairs, putting a ladder down and then going back up, we're going to find some type of Mickey Mouse technology, usually a 10 by 2 board, right? No. And then we're going to go from one roof to another. So we need to make sure that also gets prevented. I hear you guys do the inspections. You guys see a lot of that? Maybe. I know it happens, right? Ladders. If you have a completely vertical ladder, well, that ladder not only needs to be tied up, but guess who else needs to be tied up? The climber. And I never see that. Okay. The only time you don't need fall prevention is when you have an extension ladders, okay? And that's just a joke. You always need fall prevention, even if you're cutting your tree. Okay? So let's take a look at some of something that's reliable to the roofing industry right here. So again, when you're in the commercial side of the business, your railings, your sides need to be protected. There are a lot of definitions as to why it's considered. I often go by a roof and I see these 5-gallon buckets, right, with concrete, with a steel beam coming out of them. And I see the yellow tape. How many of you have seen those? How many of you have those? You don't have to raise your hand today. And we put them around this building, right? Now, let me ask you this. Is that fall prevention? I see a lot of heads going like this. Is that fall prevention? No. What is it? It's a warning, right? But is that warning going to prevent me from falling? No. So again, there are certain rules that we need to have. As you can see on the pictures right there, there are certain, if you're going to do 2x4s, if you're going to do a wood railing, that railing needs to be anchored to that roof. If you're going to do the lines, for wood railings right here, you got to have the proper height. The toe boards, you have to have the accurate strength. Anybody know how much strength these boards need to support? 200 pounds in, higher, right? So again, this yellow tape is not going to do the job. Okay? So that's an example of that. You also need to identify what's good and what's bad. You're not going to halfway do it. I mean, either you do it all the way or simply don't do it at all. But you got to know that sometimes just halfway in it is not going to get you there either. Okay? If you've tried, but still you didn't get there. Cable, that's another option. So if you're going to use cable, you got to have the proper height. Cannot deflect below 39 inches. Okay? It has to be marked every 6 feet with terminations and attachments maintained. Okay? So again, you cannot use that yellow tape. You can use markers every 6 feet, and it cannot be lower than 39 inches. You also have to protect your access to the roof. So, yeah, you have the ladder. Yeah, it does look like it has 3 feet higher, right? But it also has to be with a rail around, especially in those situations. That this is, again, just for commercial. In residential, I'm going to show you some pictures like this one. All right? So it does happen in the residential where your ladders is not properly, it's not in the right place of the house, number one. And obviously it's not 3 feet from that roof edge, is it? So, and by the way, does anybody notice something else on that roof other than the ladder? They are tied up. I'm going to give him that. You wish, right? I would give him that because that has more tension than what they're doing. If you can't barely see it, but what they've done, where the ridge meets where the rope goes over the ridge, there is a framing nail holding the rope. Okay? I was on this job, Omaha, Nebraska. I was helping these guys, and they were laughing at me because I had a hard hat, gloves, glasses, and a harness. True story. Sometimes technology doesn't cooperate with me very much. If there's any hazardous holes on the roof, so if this happens in the residential business as well, sometimes we take these vents off the roof, right? These box vents, because we're going to put some type of, maybe we're going to put a power vent, maybe we're going to put rich vent, whatever it is, and we leave this hole open. Oh, we'll get there whenever we get there, right? And I see people, yeah, that happens. And we don't cover them, so they need to be covered. If an OSHA representative comes and looks at that hole, that's a hazardous area. And if it's not properly covered, it can be trouble. Okay? Skylights. They need to be covered. They must be protected. True story, in Salt Lake City, Utah, I was doing a commercial roof. We were inspecting a roof. And the guy that I was with was like, let me tell you a story about this roof. This roof is famous in the roofing industry for the wrong reasons. And so what happened is they have done a roof. They finished the roof. It was 2 buildings, so one was higher than the other. And the distance between one and the other was about 3 feet. Okay, not very high, just a jump and you're on the other roof. So they still had an access ladder, even though it was just 3 feet. They had a little access ladder on one side of the building. So the guy that was cleaning up the roof, was finishing up the roof, decided that he didn't want to go to that other side. It was too long of a walk. Okay? But he saw that there was a pile of snow on that other roof. Now, in Utah, it doesn't snow like it snows here. It doesn't necessarily freeze, so the snow is always fluffy. Okay? It's what we refer to ski snow, right? And so what he did is that he saw that little bank of snow, and he decided to jump into it so that he wouldn't hurt himself. Little did he know that what was covering the skylight was the snow. But because it was not identified as a skylight, and it was covered with the snow, the guy jumped and he died. Simply because that skylight was not identified there. Okay, so we need to make sure. I know it's a pain because when you do a Walmart, how many skylights do you have to identify? Hundreds. Okay, hundreds. But you got to do it. So what do you protect, or how do you protect yourself? So this is a simple review of your fall arrest system. Obviously a harness, your cables, your beam wraps, your lanyards, your anchors, etc. There are a lot of them. We have some of them here. There's a lot of them that you can use. Now, some of the things that we've noticed in the industry, I travel all over the country, and one of the things that we've noticed in states, they're so worried about safety that sometimes they become their biggest enemy. So one of the things that they've done is in new construction now, and for example in Denver, Colorado, they're actually adding the anchors while they're building the house. The problem with that, does anybody have a problem with what the problem with that might be? Is that you have framers do it. And they put them after they put the OSB, they use OSB in Denver. So they put them after the OSB so they forget where the trusses are. And so they nail these anchors to just the sheeting. So when you and I go roof that house, and we try to anchor ourselves against that, guess what happens? We can pull it out very easily. So, again, we're making great efforts. A lot of construction, new construction is asking. The problem with that as well is how much construction is going on. It's going a little more, but there's not much. And so when you go back to those holes, what people are starting to do is that they have to put their anchors back as you should. You always, especially if you're, the first thing that you go onto a roof and do, you go onto the ridge, if you're going to tear off the roof, even if you're not going to tear off the roof, you get what are they called? No, the ridge caps. That's what. See, I'm referring to you, GAF guy, and you. The ridge caps, take them off, put your anchor in there, and then there's many, many different models, as you can see, that you can cover them, that can stay on the roof permanently. Especially, I have one that they have right there, one that actually bends and goes over the ridge. That's the one that I see the most. It actually allows you to have. It has a hook on both sides, so that you can actually attach on either side of the house. So those are the ones that I see the most. There we go. Hold on one second here. When you do an anchor, it's got to be a specific anchor. It's got to have points must be supported by 5,000 pounds per employee. And, of course, the full arrest and anchor points must support at least 1,000 pounds per employee attached. Okay. Let me continue with this one. This is one of my favorite pictures right here. I'm going to take you to that one. Oh, I think I missed it. I really want to show you this picture. This is that same job I was talking about in Nebraska. See if I can bring it up. Right there. Can anybody tell me the pitch of that roof? It's a 1612, okay? It's a two-story house. So you can tell from the tree right there on that house. Can anybody tell me what the distance is from where he's tied up? It's more than 6 feet. Okay, just remember that. And none of those guys are tied up. Okay? What else are they missing? Everything. Okay? So I was making a joke with this guy. I said, if I was your OSHA representative doing a drive-by, I wouldn't even have to get out of the car. You make it so easy for me. Okay? So easy. Now, another thing that I have to, when you do fall prevention, if you're going to do roofs outside of your state and you're very familiar with your state regulations, don't assume that your state regulations have the same as other states. Okay? This is what happened here. What was happening here, there was a storm in Omaha this year, and the roofer that was doing this house was from Minneapolis. So because he didn't have any jobs there in Minneapolis, there was not a lot going on there, so he drove to Nebraska and he was assuming that he could get away in Nebraska with things that he couldn't get away in Minneapolis. And that happens more than we want to admit, because we want to cut cost. Okay? So always follow your regulations, regardless as to where you are. Some of them are going to be more strict. Some of them are going to be more lenient. Regardless, they're all going to follow the federal law. The federal law says you need to be tied up, you need to have glasses, you need to have hard hats. Some states will say no hard hats. If your state requires no hard hats and you're wearing one, is that a penalty? No. So you're overachievers. Way to go. Give yourself a clap and move on. But never underachieve. Okay? Some samples of anchors. Again, there's some over here. Some of you may have to use this aerial platforms to get off to the roof. You also need to be tied up when you are controlling one of these. So please remember that and use precaution. Make sure that you have the right body harness. If you notice on the picture, these guys, although were tied up, does anybody tell me what kind of harness were they using? Did you guys see a harness that was like this on those guys on the picture? They were tied up. They had what we call these belt harnesses. So they do go around their legs, but they don't go around their body. Now, what's the problem with that? They're going to be dangling, and it's going to hurt a lot. Okay? Now, let's say that that's the least of their worries, because if they don't tie, you're not supposed to tie these things as hard as you can, right? Are you? No, you still have to have some leg room, right? Because what happens if you do fall, the tension is going to do the rest. Now, if you tie them too hard, guess what? It's going to hurt a lot, more than it already does. So what happens if these guys fall and this is no tight, they're going to fall through the harness. It's not going to hold them up. Okay, so you need to have the proper harness, which is what we're showing you right here. Okay, that's how it looks in the front. Okay. What it's going to do is that the pressure points are 4 pressure points along your legs and along your arms. So when that tension happens, that's where the tension is going to go. The tension is going to go to the core, and you're going to be safe. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to hurt. It's going to hurt, but you'd rather hurt like this than rather hurt on the ground. Lanyards. Most of the lanyards cannot be reused. One of the biggest things that we see is, because we want to save money, when somebody does fall off the roof and the lanyard does his job, the next thing we do is we have a guy, after the guy takes his harness off, what do we have that guy doing? Or at the shop, what do we have him do? Put the lanyard back together. It cannot happen. Now, there are some systems that are meant for that lanyard to be back together, but again, it's up to you. If you have one of those, then you know you have. You know you have because you paid for it. They're a little bit more pricey, but if you don't have, you have just a regular one, you know that you have to order more. every time. Or you can send it to the manufacturer and they do a refurnished of it, and the manufacturer will redo it and then send it back to you. Okay? Let me skip over the yard lines because most of you do residential. So I'm going to go right to the bottom of it. At the end of the day, all I can give you is just suggestions and ideas of what I have seen, but you have to do the work. You have to partner with MIOSHA, partner with your resources in the state, do the adequate trainings that are available for you, and then enforce this. It doesn't help you to train to get trained if you don't enforce it in your location. So you need to enforce it with your employees. You have to have safety meetings. How often should your safety meetings be? Okay? We recommend that your safety meetings, and this is something we see in the industry, best practices, that you have a big safety meeting where you bring all your employees twice a month. Okay? And a safety meeting per crew every time you start a new job. Okay? So this is where that person is going to tell you where to go, what to do, where the safety hazards are, where to put the safety equipment and whatnot. So big safety meetings twice a month, your regular safety meetings with your crew every time they start a new job. Okay? Identify your resources, identify where you're going to find them, plan for the workers to be cautious, ensure that all of the resources are available and all the equipment is working in the vicinity, etc. And that one is for that particular contractor. And always plan to look like this. Now, does anybody find anything humorous about that picture? Now, first of all, let's take care of the most important thing. Do we have everything that we need to have on a roof for safety? Now, how many of you will raise your hand and say, this is overwhelming? Overwhelmingly safe, right? Now, I want to point something out because this is usually comes with the installers. Okay? How many of you actually install roofs, are installing roofs right now? How many of you think that having all these things on your roof annoys your work? Right? Typical answer. How many of you think that you're not going to fall? How many of you think you're Superman? Okay? How many of you have actually fallen, even if it's just a couple feet? Most of you. So as overwhelming as it is a necessary evil, if you will. This needs to be done. This roof's not very steep. It's only what? 412, 312? Right there. But what's the rule? 6 feet. So even on those little roofs, you still have to have all the necessary precautions for safety. It's going to prevent it. Now, the humorous part about it is I never seen a roofer that so clean. It's a little angle, right? We're looking, is it tied up though? 3 feet above? Right? Yeah, let's assume. All right? So again, if I have to encourage you to do something is take a look at your safety procedures in your own companies. Think about what you have and what don't you have. Think about if you can consider yourself that competent person, if you have a qualified person. And if not, today you were given a lot of resources to go and find the qualified individual. You have the information at your fingertips, literally, with the websites, with the information given, with the table in the back. So take advantage of this information so that you can maintain and keep your crew safe. You pay for what you get. And I always tell my customers this. Okay? If you don't have, and I'm referring to the actual, not the contractor, but the end user, the homeowner, if they don't worry about their safety, how much are they going to worry about your house? Have you ever asked yourself that question? If they don't worry about their own safety, how much are they worrying about your house? So that's when I tell my customers, you pay for what you get. Yes, It costs money to do this. But again, it's an investment. You'd rather pay this than having to be like this contractor in California, 10 years in prison for something that was just neglect, nothing else, negligence, nothing else. Okay? Thank you guys. Have a great day, and good luck.